So we're going to start off with a quick run through of all 85 images that are in the competition tonight. They'll be on the screen for only a few seconds. It's just to give Gino and everyone in the audience an idea of what's competing tonight. Once we finish that, we'll go through a second run through. And at this point, Gino will give the score of A, B, or C. A is superior, a B is an average image, and C needs some more work. And he'll give a few comments about each image, hopefully things that will help you, the creator of that image, and everyone else, some ideas on how to improve their photography. Anyway, after we go through that second run through, we'll separate all of the A's, we'll go through them again, and Gino will pick out honors, as many or as few as he wants, really, really the best of the best. And then he'll choose one image of the month. Okay, so
I'm also going to mute everyone as soon as you finish talking, Chuck. And
okay,
then, Gino, you will unmute yourself.
Understood.
okay. You can mute everybody now, Marlene.
Okay.
Let's go.
Okay. Before we go through the images, can I make a couple of comments, Chuck? So many of you know me. For those of you who know me and for those of you who don't, I'm a photographer. I live in Santa Fe, New Mexico. I used to live in Brooklyn, which is kind of how I know Park West Camera Club. I do a lot of teaching. I teach for the main media workshops, for the Santa Fe workshops, for places like that. And I want you all to be aware of what it is that I'm doing tonight. So I don't really believe in judging based on what I like and don't like, although that'll certainly be in there. It's really much more about what works and what doesn't work for me. And so I'll be talking about whether there's anything that interferes with our relationship with the images or any distractions. I mean, you can think of pictures as theater, where there's a lead, there are supporting characters, there's a set, there's a stage, there's a background. And oftentimes the problem with pictures that don't work is that one of the bit players will upstage the lead, or the lead isn't really lit the way it should be, or there's some distractions in the background or the set. And so in the brief comments that I make, and I'm going to make sure we end on time, what I'll be looking for is what works and what doesn't work, what might be fighting with the image, if there are any problems with the post-processing that might be distracting, stuff like that. I also want you all to be aware that starting next Monday, the main media workshops is running an online class that I'll be teaching called From Almost to Wow. And it's a Lightroom specific class about post-processing and about developing your raw files in a way that there are no distractions and the best part of every image is really brought out and featured and made as beautiful as it can be. So that all said, should we take a look at the pictures?
Okay. Okay.
Okay. Sailing pictures and squirrels. It's like you knew I was coming.
Okay, Gino, we're going to run through the second time, asking you for your comments,
Understood.
a score of A, B, or C.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, again, what I'm looking for, you guys, is I'm looking for pictures that work on every level. That is the subject, the composition, the light, the post-processing, the emotion, the extra. They should all be working together. And the pictures that are going to be A's are going to have all those things and maybe even a little extra. This is a B. This is lovely, but nothing exceptional. This is also a B. I like the black and white. I'd love to see more of a subject, better separation on that person with the bicycle, but the tones are very nice. This is also a B. It could have been an A if there had been like a cat in that other window or a person, or the structure, the light, the post-processing are all really beautiful, but it needed just a little bit more to elevate it to an A. That's an A. It's really, really simple, really clean. That's great. That's a B. There's not enough there for me. This is an A. You know, again, everything is working together. The light, the gesture, the color, the post-processing, and most of all, sort of the engagement with the subject, the eye contact with the camera. This is an A. I'm a sucker for a sailing picture, but the little extra is the way that the cloud relates to the sail and the boom and the person there. Imagine the picture without the person or without the cloud. Really would be almost, and that's, you know, what I'm looking for a lot of the time is whether the picture almost works, whether it has lots of good things, but not everything. This is an A. It's very nice. This is a B. It's an almost for me. It's like I don't quite know what's going on with the person. I like the background. I like the person. It's hard for me to know what the relationship or what the story is here. Let's call this an A. This is a great example of making something out of nothing. You know, if we walked by and looked at this tree, we wouldn't necessarily see a lot, but I like the infrared or near infrared treatment. I like the silhouette of the tree. I like the way that the attention goes to the tree and to the center. It's nice. Let's call this a B. It's good. I see what you were interested in. The tonal range is nice. Yeah. Again, I wish it had like a little extra, a little something more. Let's call this a B. I mean, I'm a sucker for a sailing picture, but this feels like a very in-between moment to me. I mean, it's very nice long lens work, and that's great, but I'd love to see the action be sort of more of a peak moment. If you like sailing pictures, check out Kurt Arrigo's work. Kurtarigo. He's on Instagram, Kurt Arrigo. His work is amazing. Again, this is something out of nothing. And it's really sweet that there's no grand landscape or, you know, huge vista. I'm going to call this an A because this is some very good seeing, making something out of nothing. We're going to call this a B. I really like it. The silhouette is really nice. I like the square. I feel like if the birds had been lined up a little differently, or if there was just a little something more, this could have really easily been an A.
So I guess it'd be,
What
B.
was
Yes,
this
B.
ordered? B.
Let's also call this a B. And both the last one and this one are very, very close. But I like the ambiguity of this picture, but it's just a little too mysterious in the shadows. I would have liked to see it opened up just a little more color maybe. Still, it's nice seeing. This is an A, in spite of there being a little bit of motion to the hands and the bird. Um, the the emotional content here, the surprise here, the the feelings, the feelings engendered by not just the subject, but also the moment and the expression and the black and white. And in this case, the deep shadows are a bonus because it creates drama. But this is exactly the right moment, the right frame, the right light, the right treatment. This is very nice. There's a saying that the subject of the photograph isn't the subject, it's the photograph. And this was made by somebody who wasn't necessarily looking for an exciting subject, they were looking for a photograph. And so the subject is great, but I think really this is a picture. Let's take a look at the next one. This is an A. It's really, really clean. It's a lovely moment. It's great composition, the light, the composition, the color, the emotion, everything is working together. Although you do need to get your sensor cleaned, and I would love to see you retouch that sensor dust on the bottom right. Still, it's an A. This is also an A. This is beautifully seen, really graphic, great light, great geometry, a bit of a surprise, some ambiguity. This is very, very photographic. This is nice. Eric Miola gave a talk a couple of weeks ago here in Santa Fe, and he's got a new book out. If you don't know his work, especially this photographer, look him up. That's Meola. Eric Miola. He was an assistant to Pete Turner, who probably nobody knows his name anymore. Well done. Let's take a look at the next one. Okay, this is a B. It's good, it's simple, it's graphic. There just isn't quite enough here. This is a C. And, I'm not anxious to hand those out. This is an example of someone being really caught up in the subject and not really looking hard enough at the picture. So there's some camera shake that's making everything kind of soft. And then there's a bunch of stuff in the corners that it looks like weren't fully taken responsibility for. So this is an example of when the world is very exciting and there's probably a picture here, but the person needed to work the scene more and check their work on the back of the camera and zoom in and make sure things were sharp and make more conscious choices about what the final image was going to be. So sorry about that. This is a B. It's fine. It's nice. My recommendation for shots like this would be not to shoot them at night, but to shoot them at dusk or late dusk. So there's a little bit of tone in the sky. So it isn't just the lit bridge and then everything else is black. It's very, very well done geometrically. The exposure is really good. But it's a B. Okay, this is also a B. There was some good seeing here, but the tire and the car are kind of fighting with the tree for me, geometrically. I mean, this is an example of this is a really cool subject, and the angle is interesting. But again, I think there was a picture here, but the scene could have been worked more. That said, the color palette is particularly beautiful and really nicely done. Next. I'm curious whether this was made by the same person that made that other picture where I mentioned Eric Miola. It's the same sensitivity to geometry and architecture and light. And so the light, the geometry, the ambiguity, the palette of the black and white here, this is all conspiring to work together. That's an A. This is a C. If you're going to photograph this kind of thing, it's got to be really, really great. I mean, there's a whole genre here of runway photography, and so the position of her body, the position of her foot, the position of her body, sorry, not the position, her body language, it's all just a little bit off. Her expression and body language really needs to be great for something like this. Although, you know, again, nice long lens work. The background is decent, but I'm going to call this needs more work. We're going to call this a B. This is more of a snapshot than a photograph. The idea of silhouetting against the sun and the place is good, but I would love to see more of a graphic representation of the two women in the chairs and a better moment between them. And on the left side of the woman on the left, like all that other stuff there, that pile of beach chairs and whatever else is next to her head, it's just too visually ambiguous. And then on top of that, we've got some sort of hard white edges where dark areas meet light areas, like on the bar on the left and on the women. And that's from overcooking. That's from too much clarity or too much sharpening or too much dehaze. You know what? Let's call this a C rather than a B. So my recommendation is when you're shooting, work the scene, look at the pictures on the back of the camera, zoom in, check your focus and check what you could do to make things as clean as possible. What distractions can you remove by moving yourself or moving stuff in the scene or changing what you're doing somehow? Okay, next. This is a B. It's fine. It's nice. It doesn't feel like it has something extra to me. This is also a B. It feels more of a snapshot than a photograph. You know, getting the body language of the people to be more interesting, to make them perfectly silhouetted, maybe not cutting off the guy's shoes on the bottom. There was probably a photograph to be had here. But let's move on. Let's call this a B also. This is what I mean by photographing at dusk rather than at night. And so the light is really nice. The starburst from shooting at, you know, f/16 or 22, that's nice. I like the silhouette of the truck. I'm not quite sure what this picture is about, though. I mean, it's a picture of a bulldozer, right? It's a picture of a bridge. But, you know, when we talk about the movies of, we talk about Lord of the Rings, right? The subject is this imaginary world of Middle Earth. But really what the movies are about is this grand struggle between darkness and light inside and outside of us. And so there's what the movies, you know, of the subject, and then there's what it's about, which is something greater. And I'm having trouble finding my feelings about what the greater thing that this is about. The light is lovely, though. Next. Let's call this an A. You know, I don't make pictures like this, but this is really beautifully done. It's it feels whole and complete, and it feels like there's a feeling. It feels like there was some transformation involved here. It feels like the photographer is putting themselves and their style into this picture. And that's nice to see. Well done. This is a lovely subject and a lovely moment and a very problematic background. shooting something like this with a longer lens so we could throw the background out of focus wide open, maybe following them a little bit. So let's call this a B. Let's call this a B as well. This is very, very nice. And if you're going to photograph flowers, I want to see some transformation, some pushing of the envelope rather than just a document of a couple of roses, even if it's a good document. Let's call that a B. Let's call this a B as well. It's a nice street shot. But you know, when we start shooting street, we're talking about competing with Vivian Maier and Cartier-Bresson. So it's got to be pretty damn good. Next. Okay, let's call this an A. You know, again, the picture feels whole and complete to me. It feels like there's some emotional content. It feels like the photographer engaged in some transformation here. It's fun. It's nice. This is absolutely an A. This gave me a chuckle the first time through. It's like there's this beautiful ambiguity of texture and shape and of where she's looking. This idea of photographing her but not seeing her face, but you can see that she's looking at this thing, combined with this very nice color, sort of clean composition, great light. But there's something here that is beyond just the photograph. There's like a little wink or a nudge or a joke in here that I think is very effective. Um, it's also surprising in that I've never seen a picture like this. You know, it doesn't remind me of anyone else's pictures, and that's some really good seeing. So thank you to this photographer. Anybody see the documentary about Saul Leiter? Leiter. You know, he's a 1940s, 1950s, 1960s color photographer. And there's a certain aspect of his work in this that's very sweet. But one thing he said in the documentary is he said, seeing is an underrated enterprise. And I think this is some very good seeing. Let's call this a B. You know, it needs something extra, something more. This is nice. Let's call this an A. I mean, the gesture is great, and the geometry and the slightly unusual perspective and the emotional connection, the feeling of voyeurism here, all the circles. It's nice. Let's call this a B. It's good, and the tones are nice. The light is nice. I kind of feel like I'd like more of a perspective, like maybe closer to the chair with wider angle, something more decisive about what it is you want me to look at, rather than this sort of whole scene of, you know, one empty chair in this abandoned place. It's good though. Let's call this an A. It's sweet. It's very nice. Yeah, it's good. Next. Let's call this a B. It's an almost. There's good geometry, and I see what you were interested in, but I would have liked a little more transformation in the scene, maybe some shallower depth of field, or um, something so that, could you go back just a second? Something so that everything wasn't so equal. And the other thing that's tough about this is the highlights are way, way too hot. So you know what? Let's actually call this a C because that's problematic. Having the highlights be burnt out white is, it's something that even non-photographers will notice and feel like there's something wrong here. Next. Okay. Let's call this a C as well. I think it could have been a B or even an A, but the problematic part is the guy's expression. It feels like he's not quite making contact with us. I think that the idea of using this light and this drama is really cool. But I would have liked to see the scene get worked a little more and a frame where we really connect with the person a little better be the one that was chosen and presented. There are also the distractions of sort of the top right and the bottom right, where everything is deeply in focus. And I don't necessarily want all that stuff in focus taking away from the guy. Next. Let's call this a B. There isn't enough there for me. Let's call this a B as well. We needed something else, you know, a cat or a person curled up on one of those things. Maybe the words retouched out on the umbrellas. Maybe a little stronger color. It's good, but it's missing something. Let's call this a B. I like the ambiguity of her expression, the feeling that she didn't know she was being photographed. I like the waviness in the picture frame and the cross reflection. I like the black and white treatment, and the light on her is really beautiful. What I don't like is those burnt out clouds in the back. So it's a tough one. It's a tough exposure situation. Generally, the solution is to expose for the highlights, and with a raw file, we could pull those shadows back out and get the detail in and out of the window. But still, there's something very nice about this. Let's take a look. Okay. This is fun. I mean, the visual ambiguity of, you know, whether it's turned sideways or not, like which person is sideways and what's happening here. This is nice. I feel like with some more dynamic post-processing, it could have maybe been an A, but let's call this a B. The color felt a little anemic to me. This is, sorry. This is a B. It's nice. The light is good. The texture is nice. The black and white. But again, there isn't quite enough there to make it an A. There isn't that extra thing, that special thing, that mojo, that surprise. Let's call this a B, and there's an A hidden in here somewhere. The reason it's a B is because that car on the left is almost more important than the people. It's so white and so crisp and sort of so textured and processed. The picture and the good seeing that this photographer did was sort of this area of really unusual light, and it's really nice. But I feel like the background or side ground is kind of upstaging that. And that if this were distilled down a little more, if the background were more out of focus, um, if the outside edges of the frame were darkened down and the people lightened up a little bit, um, that it would have been more effective. Okay, let's call this an A. This is really, really interesting. And the tones are nice. And there's a bit of a challenge in here in that, you know, it isn't a pretty subject, but it's really interesting. So well done. Okay, so this is a funny thing. But as a photograph, I feel like it's more of a snapshot. It's more of a look at this rather than a photograph with a capital P. Um, so let's just call this a B. This is also very nice, but I think also a B in that we're being shown a place and the light is beautiful and you know it's got a feeling, but there isn't really any sort of primary subject for me to latch onto, and I kind of wish there was. So good, but not great. What's next? Okay, so we talked about subject dependent photographs, but this really works. This subject is hilarious. And the structure of the picture supports it. So let's call this an A. I mean, it's a busy picture, but the separation is good, largely due to the treatment of the color. You know, the way the background is almost monochrome and the bicycle with the balloons is bigger, closer, more colorful, and kind of hilarious. Well done. I like this. There's extra here. Um, the depth of field is really nice because you can see the sculpture in the back is out of focus, but the people in the middle and the subject are in focus. So there's sort of three different planes, maybe four in this picture. And I think the moment and the gesture of the primary subject considering his work here, it's a really nice relationship between his expression and the thing he's drawing and the sculpture itself. But the extra is all the fun things there are to see in the background, the relationships between the people and the sculptures, and the relationship between the sculptures and the people, and nothing's interfering with anything else. It's like the heads are all in the clear. Now, I am noticing that there's some weird focus ambiguity because the sculpture on the left, the bust to the left of the guy, is out of focus, but the people behind that are in focus. But I'm going to let that go. And I'm going to say this is an A. This is well seen. Let's call this a B. It's almost, and part of the reason that it's almost is because the brightest part of the picture is all the way in the back with the clouds rather than in the foliage of the trees. And if you're going to do black and white, having that full tonal range and that great sense of depth and pushing the attention to the subject rather than the background is really critical. So almost. Let's call this a C. The reason it's problematic is because there is really no there. It's almost like this is just a background waiting for a subject. Like there isn't enough to carry a picture here. This is, Let's call this a B. And the reason it's not an A is because the shape of the sun is a little weird. I really like the seeing and I really like the light. But if that sunburst had looked more, it just looks weird and that's distracting. The birds are good. I would have liked to see variations on this. This is so close, but let's call it a B. Okay. Okay, if I'm going to be fair, I'm going to call this a C for the same reason that I called that picture 2 or 3 pictures ago a C. There just isn't enough here. It's like it's a part of a picture, but it's not whole and complete. And if we compare this to sort of those architectural studies that really theoretically are the same as this, just a collection of light and shadow and shapes, I think what we find is that this is missing that feeling of completeness. Okay, so pictures of other people's pictures, pictures of signs, those are problematic, but this is an A. This is great. I mean, I'm making up a story that this is one of those fence projects that has big pictures printed and put up, but the way that just a piece of this picture was used and integrated with the barbed wire and the caught up plastic in the fence, it's just like the white of the background of the print and the sort of very light sky. There's something really, really well seen about this. This is very nice. Okay, let's call this a B, because it feels more like a snapshot than a photograph to me. It's like this is an interesting place and the people are there, but it doesn't feel like a photograph with a capital P. There's no transformation, there's no extra, there's no feeling, um, there's not enough there. Let's call this a B as well. I mean, it probably could have been an A if there was something reflected in that drop of water. If it had been used as a lens, if there was something a little more to this. But still, the tones are nice. It's kind of a cool feeling and a close-up, but there isn't quite enough there. Same thing with this. This is cool. And I like the moving water and it's crisp and I love sparrows, but you know, the standard for photographs of birds and wildlife is wildly high. So let's call this a B, you know, which means good, average. Okay. I'm going to call this a C for a number of reasons. Um, Mostly because there are a lot of really strange ambiguities to this. Like the left side of the lighthouse, especially where the shingles are, it looks like I can see where the sky was either cut out or retouched. And similarly, the water behind the lighthouse is different than the water on the sides. So there's a bunch of stuff here that looks overcooked and over manipulated. There's also a white line where the top of the lighthouse meets the sky on the left side. And the amount of texture and clarity in the foreground is just like way overcooked. And so I like the sky and I like the lighthouse and I like the leading lines, but there's a lot of weird stuff going on here that distracts from just relating to the picture as a picture. So, sorry. Let's call this a C. Um, the the dragonfly is a little soft. The focus isn't crisp. The rope is so much more visually compelling than any other part of the picture that it really fights with the dragonfly. And so, sorry about that. There's also like kind of no black in the picture. All the blacks are very, very light. And so this doesn't really have a feeling of dimensionality that comes from having that full tonal range. So bunch of distractions in here, needs work. Okay. I'm going to call this a C also because of a couple of distractions. One is that it looks like the picture was flipped because of the words on the shirt, and that's distracting. At the bottom right corner, it looks like it was cropped and there's sort of an edge to the frame, and that's distracting. Um, yeah, let's just call this a C and go on. It's not enough to have an interesting subject. The picture needs to be done well as a picture. Okay, again, making something out of nothing, and that's well done. There's some weird overprocessing in the leaves, though, in between the branches of the trees. But the overall frame was really well seen. I'm going to compromise and call this a B. Okay, this reminds me of the picture of the tree in the pit where I didn't like the wheel on the side. The perspective is similar. It's another urban subject. We're looking down at the sidewalk, but this is an A. This is great. I mean, the finding of the Harry Callahan, Aaron Siskind sort of abstract in the urban environment, and the seeing of the picture that is really nothing. There's like the subject isn't a trash can. The subject of the picture is the picture, and this sort of modern art that somebody saw out in the wild. This is very nicely done. The palette also complements the subject, the way it's almost monochrome, but not quite. The colors aren't strong. The textures are emphasized. Um, so the seeing, the perspective, the post-processing, the extra, it's all really, really well done. Bravo. All right, let's call this a B. It's perfectly fine. It's a, but there's no extra. And also, just everybody, you've got to be careful about overcooking. If you look on the right side where the mountain meets the sky, there's this sort of delineated white line in between the sky and the mountain. And again, that comes from too much sharpening, too much clarity, too much dehaze, too much texture. When you're doing your post-processing, you really need to zoom in to check stuff and not just do the work with the picture fitted on the screen. So this is good. It's just not everything is working together. So let's call it a B. I'm having trouble with this because I don't know if the sort of painterly filtered effect is entirely intentional. I mean, it's a photograph that almost looks like a painting, but looks like a photograph. And of course, the subject matter is moving, right? Someone touching someone's coffin. You have to imagine it's a loved one, and the light is working and the geometry is working. But um, the the fact that I'm not clear about the photographer's intention with the post-processing, I'm going to call this a B. Okay, I'm gonna just call this a B and go on there. Um, yeah, that's great. Let's call this a B. It's good. It's nice. Let's call this a B as well. Oftentimes with pictures like this and the picture 3 pictures ago of that tabletop, like much shallower depth of field might add something to this, whether it's done in the camera or in the post-processing. And it's kind of a nice moment, but there's definitely a but. It's not a wholehearted, unequivocal ooh or ah. So let's take a look at the next one. Again, with this and the last one, I really see what you're interested in, and these are good. Don't necessarily feel like they're 100%. So let's call this a B. There's so much that's good about this. The light, the color, it looks very old school, very J. Maisel. And the gesture seems so in between. You know, that's what Jay talks about. He talks about light, color, gesture. This has the light, it has the color, but the gesture is just feels like an in-between moment rather than the perfect moment. So let's call it a B. Let's call this a C. And you know, I don't mean to be mean in any way by being critical of the photographs that are getting a C. It's just there's a bunch of stuff here that doesn't work. So one is that the subject isn't sharp, it isn't crisp. Another is that the picture doesn't have a full tonal range. It's like there's probably black in here, but if you looked at a histogram of a picture like this, there'd be a huge space on the right side. And so when we went, you know, into the old wet dark room and we made a print that wasn't a full tonal range, we would say it was muddy. So this is muddy and a little out of focus. And so that's what's working against it. All right, I'm a sucker for a squirrel, but this is more of a snapshot than a photograph, so let's just call it a B. This, in comparison with the last one, I mean, the gesture of this animal, the feeling, the dignity, the hauteur, the fact that there's, you know, some fun post-processing going on where all the color's been taken out except in the eye, the crisp focus. This is really, really good. This is a lovely portrait, and let's call it an A. Lovely portrait and a lovely photograph, right? I mean, just the photographic choices there are really good. The shallow depth of field, the lights working with the shallow focus, with the post-processing, with the structure of the picture. Sorry, it's just really good. Let's call this a B. It's fine. The head is well separated out. The light is nice. The long lens isolation is good. The patterns are good. It just doesn't do much for me emotionally. This is cool. This is fun. I mean, there's enough here that you could look at this for a while. And the combination of motion and steadiness is really interesting. The choice of the frame is also really good, where you have, you know, those two people in the lower left who are sort of anchors and interesting, and they're having a conversation, and then the guy with the balloons, and then the moving people, and then there's some exotic clothing and some tourists, and even though it's this low light, it's got this full tonal range where there is black and there is white. This is really unusual and really very nice. Let's call this an A. It's a picture you could look at for a while. Okay. There's nothing wrong with this. And also, there isn't enough about it that's really, truly compelling for me to hang out with this picture. So let's call it a B. Let's call this a B as well. I mean, it's nice, it's fun. Um, again, with sort of street photography and particularly with these reflections and these ambiguities, it's like, let's take a look at Vivian Meyer's work and see what she did with those. And um, that's the sort of thing we're all aspiring to. Let's take a look at the next one. Again, this when I say again, I mean again, like the woman with the print scarf with the truck full of oranges. There's something about this that makes me smile. This moment is just such a funny moment. And then the shallow depth of field, the light is really good, the processing is really good, the moment is just great, and what's included and what's excluded seems complete and whole. Also, the lightest part of the picture, excuse me, is right in the middle, and it's driving my attention right to that lizard's face. And then there's sort of the little joke of how the texture of, I guess it's cactus, and the texture of the lizard are the same. So there's a lot here. There are really good photographic choices and good emotional choices, and it feels whole, complete, and a little funny in a good way. So let's give this an A. I know this spot. um, I like this picture. Let's call this let's call this a B. Uh, it's good. Let's call this a B as well. It feels like it's nice, but I'd love to see something um, additional here to make it sort of surprising or exciting or a little more fun. Okay, surprising, exciting, a little more fun. I think we've got those things here. Um, light, color, gesture, expression, and a bunch of surprises. You know, the face paint, the piercings, the not looking directly at the camera, the contrast between the hat and the color of the face. Um, yeah, this is fun. This is very nicely done. Let's call this an A. And this as well. Let's call this an A. It feels whole and complete, and in spite of the words, this idea, this visual idea of there being sort of several planes and the shadow and the stuff in his hands. I mean, this is a picture you could look at for a while, and there's this emotional content to it that's kind of cool, that even though you can see less than half of his face, you could see that he's amused. So there's a lot of good choices in here. Let's take a look at the next one. Okay, nice. Um, this reminds me very much of one of Jerry Uelsman's photographs. and maybe the photographer who made this knows what I'm talking about. Let's call this an A. That's good. Okay, so great choice with the perspective, really unusual. I like the use of the lens. The gesture, the body language doesn't feel like it's quite enough to be perfectly satisfying. And the same thing with the post-processing. The color is kind of anemic. And so I feel like this probably had an A hidden in there somewhere, but let's call it a B. This is good. I mean, the idea of framing those trees in this architectural geometry, the exposure, the color is nice. That bottom left corner has some fuzzy ambiguity in it. Let's call it a B. Okay.
Okay, folks, that's the second run through.
Before we go through them again to give honors and the image of the month, I would love to see these 25 all at once. So if we could take a look at that, that would be great. And if we could make them just big enough so it fills, there you go. A little smaller maybe? Or yeah, you're doing it.
Oh, there needs to be,
One more.
wait a minute.
So yeah, there we go. That's great. So what I want you all to see is that it can be really useful to look at the pictures as thumbnails, where we can see the strength of these pictures even when they're this small. And we could see that even at this size, there's something about them that really works and is really jewel-like. And we're not going to take the time to do it, but if we had looked at the bees, we would also see that at this size, they wouldn't be quite as strong. And if we looked at the Cs, I think we would also see a pattern emerge even at thumbnail size. And so before we move on, I just want to be able to look at all of these together to sort of reconfirm what I'm thinking about the image of the month and about honors. So let's run through them, and then I'd like to come back to this view and then award the honors and the image of the month. If that's okay. Does that work, Chuck?
That's fine.
Okay.
Wonder if you can do the slideshow from here. Okay, see. Apparently so. Okay. So all right, so what are we gonna do?
We're just going to go through these, and then when we're done going through them, we're going to go back to that grid view, and then I'm going to award the honors and the image of the month. And you can pull up each of them when I do that. So let's just go through a couple seconds at a time, the whole thing.
All right, well.
So what I hope you're all seeing is that these are all rock solid. There's nothing in them that's fighting with anything else. They all feel whole and complete, and they all have an emotional component to them, you know, a feeling that goes with them. All the photographic choices are good. All the post-processing choices are good. And I hope you can see that there are also some of them that have like a little extra. And that's what we're really all aspiring to all the time.
Say, come on.
Thank you. Okay. So let's give honors to 15. You want to pull that up?
Well,
You just hit the space.
all right.
There you go. Okay. Now let's go back to the grid. Let's give honors to 16 and 17.
Well, that's my, just, what, oh, right. All right, 16. 16. Here we go. No, is that what I want to do? No, that wasn't what I wanted to do.
Command Bill.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to mess with your system.
Oh, all right, just trying to get it right. Okay. There we go. Okay.
17.
17.
Yep.
Okay.
28.
28. Okay.
49.
Nope.
63.
Um,
73. 78. 'And drum roll, please. The image of the month is number 33. Now, when I lead workshops and when I do portfolio reviews, you know, we have a group looking at someone's work. And what I always ask is the person whose work it is, I ask them not to talk. I ask them to be a fly on the wall and just to sort of absorb people's reactions to their pictures and to listen like a fly on the wall to the conversations people have about the pictures. Would you pull up number 33 now, the image of the month?
yeah, well, just wait a second.
Okay, sorry.
To go back to the other one.
And so one of the things that I
Okay.
ask people to listen for, to look for when other people are looking at their work is these spontaneous exclamations of like, ooh, ah, or an intake of breath or a wow, or like, what is the spontaneous somatic bodily reaction to the pictures? And the reason this is the image of the month for me is because this is the one that I had the strongest immediate reaction to. It's like, ooh, ah, wow, like cool, funny, nice. Um, this is beautifully done. And, you know, all of the A's are very, very well done. And so, you know, I think you should all be really proud of yourselves. And, you know, many of the B's were very close to A's, and those are all really good as well. And so, you know, as always, the level of work that the club does is really, really good. And this is just a pleasure. And I want you all to remember, especially those of you who might not be happy with the way that I assessed your pictures, that I'm just one person and it's just an opinion, and you know, it's affected by what I had for breakfast.
Okay, let's go over the winners, the A's.
All right, A's first.
What happened to number 4?
Maybe left.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, okay.
Okay,
Yeah, wait a minute. Man. Okay.
an
all right,
A is awarded to Ann Broder.
That's not
I'm
him.
sorry. No, this is Dove Bieber for Beacon. Dove, are you here?
Dove was here earlier. Let me see if he's here now.
Well, we'll just move along.
Dove is here, but he's muted.
Go back.
I'm gonna ask him to unmute himself.
Okay.
Dove, do you want to say something about your picture?
Not really.
Okay.
This is what I saw, and this is what you get.
Is this the the DM Museum at Beacon?
Yes, it is.
It's
It
beautiful.
was acrylic setup, like a room.
Hmm? I don't know how to get the image to people back.
Looks like an Albers painting.
Okay.
Okay, and A goes to Ann Broder for Penned. Ann?
And unmute yourself.
This was taken in West Cornwall. There was a farm, and that's how I got that shot.
Okay,
Could you please announce that people should unmute themselves in advance?
okay. Those people who got A's and above, if you want to unmute yourself, it'll make it easier. This shot is an A for Bruce Byers, Clearwater. Bruce?
Hey, as you're saying, I've loved sailing, and I really look for shapes on this craft, and love the way the clouds would add to it, and then the added piece, as he had said, the guy got up on the sail. They were actually measuring the sail for a new sail.
So that's not a young Pete Seeger, is it, Bruce?
It's I think Pete Seeger built the boat.
For sure, that was his boat for a long time. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's the third largest mainsail in the U.S. and they're making a new one for it.
Nice.
So he was up there measuring it.
Okay. And A goes to Betsy Courier
Oh, but now
for
it's
Symphony.
there are two.
I can't make that out.
A symphony in gray.
Symphony. Okay.
So I just love the way the light filtered through the leaves in this particular woods. And then this very rough trunk rising up and erupting the symphony. And it's infrared, as the judge noted. But I tried to minimize the whites as much as possible.
Okay. And A goes to Elaine Dix for Pond Garden.
Elaine is having trouble unmuting herself. Did you hear me, Chuck?
Yeah. All
She
right, let's
can't-
move on.
She can't unmute, right?
Okay, next. And A goes to Jill Grease for Oculus.
I was coming home from work one day and the light was just amazing on the ceiling at the Oculus in New York. Took this picture.
And did you also do the color one?
No,
Interesting. Okay, cool.
And A to Chuck Pine for Statue with Fireworks. I was in China and this was shot down in the harbor with fireworks going on over in Jersey. This A goes to Mike Schleif for Hanging Out.
Well, I was hanging out on the top floor of the Guggenheim, looking at the people resting.
And A goes to Dudley Slater for Safe Harbor.
This was all about just the morning light and the stillness and the sense of peacefulness. And I thought the juxtaposition was a lot of fun.
Where is it?
Where is it, Dudley?
It's in Norway.
Okay. And A goes to Madeline Barbara for Halloween Fish Fry.
This was taken in Iceland, where they were drying codfish. And they had racks and racks of fish drying.
And A to Karen Corrigan, A Moment at the Met.
Karen, you can unmute yourself.
I was just attracted by the dedication of the artist. Sorry, that's my cat.
And A goes to Nicole Dasso for Barbed Wire.
She isn't here tonight.
Okay. And A goes to Alec Rill for Balloons.
That's in Morocco, in Marrakesh, in the center of the Medina. And I was practicing for the first time 1/15 to 1/8 of a second with a tripod that I brought all the way from New York to Marrakesh to take this picture.
Well done.
And A to Puneet Sood for Fried Face.
Yeah, this was taken during the Pride Parade in New York. This girl was dressed top to bottom in these striped colors. So I took a bunch of pictures. This was the one which stood out to me the most. Even her pants were in this combination of colors.
And A for Janet Susan, Closed for Business.
Yeah, that's what I think it was. I was walking down the street in the town where I live in Manhasset, and I saw this man who I think was going to put up a sign, and it looks like he was telling me not to come in. But I don't know, but I liked the picture. I got a good one.
And an A to Laura Toledo, Beach Fireworks.
So I took this summer after the 4th of July, and I was like the beach, and it was amazing. So I took that. I took several, and that's one of them. But the color of the sea and everything was wonderful.
Okay, we'll now go to the A's with honors.
So that picture of the fireworks that we just looked at, I would love for that artist to look up Apocalypse 2 by Jerry Uelsmann. That's Uelsmann.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
An A with honors to Rayleigh Dunkel for Pigeon Man. Rayleigh?
I don't think she was here. I don't think she's here tonight.
Okay. An A with honors to Sonia Durante, Swinger.
Yeah, this was taken in Disney World. She was on a float in a parade, and I just loved her enthusiasm. So I took this shot.
An A with honors to Barry Farrer for Twisted.
This was taken on our club trip to Staten Island ferry terminal, and the sky was pitch dark, and this was well lit, still lit by rays of the sun. So I loved it.
Right.
An A with honors to Natalie Manzino for Tulips.
This is in camera, multiple exposure, one sharp and one soft.
An A with honors to Bruce Byers,
This is-
Agra Balloons.
This is my face after the decisive moment. And I just love color, but I also love black and white, but this just sang out to me. I had to take it.
It's got an Eastern European feel.
It's in India, actually.
Wow, very cool.
Yeah, it looks like Delhi to me. I'm from Delhi.
Just Agra, actually.
Ah, okay, North India.
Okay. An A with honors, Paul Grabanier, Banana Split.
Yeah, so this is, I crossed the street from my apartment, and this is outside the Dunkin' Donuts.
An A with honors for Elena Pierpont, an emu pose.
An emu that I took this picture in the Brooklyn Zoo. And he was pretty, I think, fascinated with the camera and hearing the clicking, and he did the pose for me.
An A with honors for Marlene Schoenbrunn, Hungry Iguana.
So what's interesting about this photo that you won't know about was that it was taken in the Galapagos and on the first day on one of the islands, and I had fallen just before that and broke my wrist. So it was not easy to take pictures with a broken wrist. And I wondered if I was going to be frightened of these creatures, but it turned out that I wasn't. And I just really enjoyed, I took, hundreds of pictures of this animal.
Okay. And the image.
Oh, that's back to Rayleigh.
You did that one already.
Yep.
Okay.
All right.
Image of the month. Oranges by Alec Rill. Alec?
So this is also in Morocco. Morocco is well known for their oranges. I have an orange every day. It was amazing. And I was passing by, and usually as a street photographer, I choose a place and I wait for something interesting to happen. In this case, I was just walking around and I saw this woman passing by and I just took one picture. That's it. And then the whole thing disappeared. So this is a picture.
Okay, very good. We'll stop sharing the screen. Okay, everybody. First of all, I want to thank